Isn't it strange we talk least about the things that we think about the most? Isn't it strange that we talk least about the things we think about the most? Yeah, that quote. How many of you hear it and think that's powerful? In just a few words, it says a lot of truth. Some of you younger students out there, you might be saying, yeah, I think all the time about my crush, but I don't say anything, except on WeChat. And you teachers out there, you're always thinking, man, this meeting could have just been an email. But you don't say anything because, job security. But when I hear this quote, it really sticks with me. It really struck me, and it's always stayed with me. Because I associate it with the fact that we're all walking around day to day fighting a battle that each other knows very little about. And that battle is due to the fact that we're always thinking, but we're maybe not saying. And when I think of this quote, it goes back to a vision I've had for a very long time of standing on a stage, much like this one, speaking to an audience, much like yourself. And that vision is me talking about our inner worlds, talking about our inner struggle, and thinking about the fact that inside there's a lot happening that others can't see. And to be completely honest, I didn't know when I would ever give that talk and realize that vision. And then in May, I got an email from the TED committee that said, would any teachers be interested in speaking at this event? And I said, I'm going to leave this one up to fate, send in a quick application, and see what happens. 2 days later, fate sent me an email and said, congratulations, you've been accepted to speak. Yes, I'm finally going to do it. How am I ever going to do this? And the journey to get from here to here was such a challenging one for me. But alas, I am here. And so, first and foremost, it's a chance for me to explain what that journey from here to here was like. But more importantly, my talk tonight is a call for you to think about what it is that maybe you're always thinking about, but not saying. And then to consider maybe speaking up about that, to talk to someone, or to speak out about the topic I'm going to discuss tonight. Or maybe it's just reaching out to listen to someone that you care about. So why was it so difficult for me to get from here to here? Well, I've already told you I wanted to talk about our inner worlds, which isn't exactly a light subject. And I wanted to talk about it from the point of view from someone who's had his struggles with the weight of his own thoughts and being overwhelmed by them at times. I wanted to talk about mental health from a personal perspective. And I especially wanted to talk about it for all you young people out there that maybe are smiling and achieving on the outside, but on the inside you're struggling with anxiety, depression, or another inner struggle. But before I could ever do that, before I could get on stage, I would have to overcome the resistance. The resistance is a term I borrow from the author Steven Pressfield. And I'm going to use it tonight to describe what it was like to get from here to here. Here's a quote from Steven to explain what the resistance is. Most of us have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between the two lies the resistance. And for me, that resistance was constantly pestering me. It was telling me that I shouldn't speak tonight because it was saying, you should stay silent. You should keep thinking a lot, but saying a little. And so, to be here tonight, I had to overcome that resistance. And now I'm going to show you what it felt like to have the resistance in my head, telling me that it was better off to stay silent about mental health. So I'm going to embody the resistance tonight. I'm going to bring it to life and show you what it was like to be told that I should stay silent. Reason 1, you're an imposter. There are mental health professionals out there, people far more talented, far more prepared than you to speak on this topic. There are already TED Talks out there with millions of views on these topics. Who are you to stand up on stage and speak about the topic of mental health? You're an imposter. And besides, you haven't really struggled. You really have the nerve to get on stage and use the word struggle? during a pandemic in which people around the world are truly suffering, you haven't struggled, you haven't suffered. You're better off just to sit down and never give this talk. So maybe you just need to toughen up. You just need to toughen up. Short-term pain, long-term gain. If you are strong enough to get up on stage, then you are strong enough to talk about resilience, about strength. You don't need to speak about vulnerability. Why would you get up on stage and be vulnerable when you can talk about having strength and grit? And anyways, it's not going to make sense. You've got 15 minutes, an auditorium full of people from all over with different backgrounds, and you're going to try and weave all these narratives together, and they're going to leave saying, huh? What was he talking about? And don't forget, you're not special. It's a TED Talk, a TED Talk. TED Talks are for people with brilliant ideas, enlightening perspectives, and amazing stories. You have none of the above. You're going to get up on stage, and you're not unique or special. You don't have anything to share that's worthy of a TED Talk. And besides, everyone's going to know you're just looking for attention. You just want one big giant pat on the back from all the people out in the crowd tonight. You just want that approval and people to say, good job. Sit down, scrap the talk. And truthfully, you're fine. You're fine, man. You're going to get up on stage and talk about mental health? Look around. Look at where you work. You've got a great job. You love it. Family, you love it. Life's good. Chill out. You're fine. And the final reason, the biggest reason of them all, the stigma. You are going to be gossiped about after this talk. You are going to be viewed as weak. People are going to say, remember when he got on stage and tried to talk about that? And it's always going to stain you, and you're going to be judged for giving that talk. You are going to regret ever getting on stage and saying the words mental health. So yeah, the stigma is real. And that fear that when you speak about mental health that you're going to be judged is really real too. And that big reason to stay silent, it became my biggest motivation to get up on stage tonight and have this talk. And that's because I didn't want my stigma, my fear, to keep me from doing what I'd wanted to do for so long. So, you see, there's two kinds of stigma. The first one is a public stigma, and that's my fear of you guys out there saying there's something wrong with him, and me being afraid of your judgment. And then there's the second kind of stigma, which is inside of me, and that's self-stigma, and that's me saying, I'm afraid that there's something wrong with me, and that if I speak up about it, I'm going to be judged. And that fear of being judged by our friends, by our families, and by our community, it's scary stuff. And it keeps us silent, and it compounds our suffering because we end up feeling separate from the people around us. But that's why it's so important to speak out and to normalize talking about our mental health and the fact that we all fight battles and face struggles. And when we do that, we feel more connected, and we lose that sense that we're disconnected from those around us. I want to share an example tonight with you of someone who did the same thing that really inspired me. And his name is Kevin Love. He's a professional basketball player, and if you're a basketball fan, you know him. He's an NBA champion. He is an Olympic gold medalist, and he's a multiple-time All-Star. But I'm not talking about him tonight because of his basketball skills. In 2018, Kevin wrote a very, very honest, from-the-heart article about his lifelong struggles about anxiety and depression. And having watched him on the court, you never would have dreamed of this. But this boiled over in 2018 when he had a panic attack during the game. And after processing what happened, Kevin decided to speak out because he wanted to help end the stigma around his inner suffering that he had never really even shared with the people closest to him. So he wrote this article, and I'm going to share a little piece of it with you tonight because it inspired me so much. It really makes you think about how we're all walking around with experiences and struggles, all kinds of things. And we sometimes think we're the only ones that are going through them. The reality is that we probably have a lot in common with what our friends and our colleagues are dealing with. So I'm not saying that everyone should share all their deepest secrets. Not everything should be public, and that's every person's choice. But creating a better environment for talking about mental health, that's where we need to get to. And that's where we need to get to. After reading Kevin's words, I felt a sense of connection and inspiration and a desire to speak out myself, what I'd been holding in for so long. I was going to take that first step to talking about my emotions and how I really felt inside. I wanted to share the message that in reality we're not alone, and that just having those simple conversations with others and taking those tiny baby steps makes us feel more connected to our families, our friends, and our community. This has taken me a long time to realize. For most of my life, I was truly thinking that I'd never be able to share what I felt inside, that the words that were in my head, I could never express them in person, and that no one would understand what I'm talking about, and that they would judge me for it. So I kept everything bottled up, I kept it hidden, and I decided it was better off inside. As long as I was laughing and smiling and looking normal and playing the game, there was no need to share. It was just in my head. And that's where I want to stop tonight and focus, because what's just in your head isn't just in your head. It's your whole lived reality. It's the conversations with yourself. It's what you think about when you go to sleep at night, and it's what ultimately defines your life. You can be achieving and succeeding on the outside and winning and winning and winning, but if you're winning on the outside, but you're anxious and you're confused and you feel alone on the inside, then you're losing where it really counts. And so for me, I've gradually learned when that noise gets turned up and my thoughts become overwhelming, that there's value in speaking about how you feel. And I'm by no means a master at that. I'm standing here admitting that. But the last 9 months have been very, very challenging for me, as they have been for many of you out there for different reasons. And I can say, as I've been struggling in those 9 months, I've learned the value of speaking up. So when I spoke out with a therapist, I learned the value of perspective. And when I spoke to my wife with honesty, it deepened the connection of a relationship. And when I told my friends here that I was struggling, it deepened the strength of our friendship. And when I spoke out honestly with my colleagues here at the school about how hard some things were, I felt this sense of empathy and this sense of community and this sense that that brave teacher face you see every day, sometimes it can be hard to muster. So that feeling of connection that I speak about, that feeling of community, one more time I want to go back to Kevin and his talk and how much I felt connected to it and thus ready to speak tonight. He said, no matter what our circumstances are, we're all carrying around things that hurt. And they can hurt us if we keep them buried inside. Not talking about our inner lives robs us of getting to know ourselves and robs us of the chance to speak out to others in need. So if you're reading this or hearing this and you're having a hard time, no matter how big or small, it seems to you, I want to remind you that you're not weird or different for sharing what you're going through. It's just the opposite. It could be the most important thing that you do. It was for me. And while I can't say yet if this will be the most important thing I've done, I took strength in those words and felt strength coming to the stage tonight. And I also felt strength to fight that stigma, that number 8 reason to stay silent about mental health. So back to where I started. I've said a lot tonight. I hope that maybe you've considered evening out that balance a little bit between what you think and what you say. And I hope perhaps that maybe, just maybe, you consider walking out of here ready to speak a little more about that which you're thinking, ready to speak out a little bit about mental health to normalize it and break the stigma. And for those of you who are listening to my talk and say, I don't have any weight on my shoulders, maybe that means it's your role to reach out to the people you care about and ask them if they're doing okay, and be there to listen. So I want to conclude with an adapted version of the quote that I started with. And I wrote this for me to take with me when I leave the stage tonight and go on with the rest of my life. I hope that you can hear it and read it and take away my message from the speech. Isn't it liberating when we talk honestly about the things that we think about the most? Thank you.